Good morning, everybody. Today on Spotlight, we'll look at the alarming Jayru Campbell case. It's video that has gone viral across America, and some say another black eye on the city of Detroit, and a talented young man who now finds his future in doubt as he faces the criminal justice system. And what about the alleged victim in this case? We'll talk about all of it today in our roundtable discussion. Joining me will be Zenobia Jeffries, managing editor of the Michigan Citizen, Bankole Thompson, senior editor of the Michigan Chronicle, Reverend David Alexander Bullock, national spokesperson of Change Agents Consortium. I'll also talk to Action News anchor Carolyn Clifford about her insight into this case. And later, two of our Channel 7 posters will join me to look at the latest numbers reflecting the mood of Michigan voters. It's Sunday, February the 16th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Group, thanks for joining us today to shed some light on this. Prosecutor Kim Worthy came out last week. She announced two charges against Jayru Campbell.
We don't charge people or not charge people due to their station in life. The law and its consequences applies to everyone.
Was that the right charge?
I don't think so, Chuck. I really don't. We talked about that when she announced it, and I think it was a bit excessive, actually.
Why?
Not even a bit excessive, but you look at what happened with, Jayru body slamming a guard. The felony charge was an assault with an intent to do great bodily harm. Mm-hmm. Seems as if it was an intent to do great bodily harm, there would have been more physical action that happened. From what we see on the videotape, that's not what happened. It looked as if there was an exchange between Jayru and the guard, not as if he just attacked this guard, as what Worthy's announcement made it seem like. And he slammed the guard and he walks away. That's what's shown in the video. I think that a 17-year-old shouldn't be made an example of in that manner. I don't think that it was a criminal act that he did. I think that it's an act that by the Detroit Public Schools Code of Conduct should be addressed in that manner. But I don't think to criminalize him, I think, is just way overboard. All
right, let's get some other opinions in here. I've got to tell you, the first time I saw that video on our website, I mean, I absolutely cringed, mm-hmm. and I couldn't believe it. And I went and I clicked it again, and I watched it about 3 or 4 more times, mm-hmm. and my first reaction was, this didn't happen in a school, and a student doing it to an authority figure, a security guard, and a body slam, not on a football field where there's a little bit of give and take in that surface, but on a hard floor. I mean, that was my initial reaction.
And I want the other guys to chime in too, but I think what's interesting is when I first saw it, my first reaction was, what did the guard do? Because I looked at it as a parent. I'm a parent. I have my daughter just graduated from a DPS school.
And you weren't thinking this is just a jock out of control?
No, when I first saw that, I said, I wonder what the guard did. That was my first, and before I even watched it, I said, what did the guard do to initiate?
Well, I think the prosecutor reserves the right. I mean, she's the prosecutor, the district attorney, to bring in what charges she feels is necessary to address.
And we should say, in fairness, that we invited Prosecutor Worthy to be part of the show. She's at a prosecutor's conference. She couldn't be here, but we do have video to be able to talk about what she did.
She reserves the right to bring these charges, and we'll see how it plays out in court. But I think, when you look at this story, the narrative, it's not been mentioned in terms of what was the relationship between the individual who is charged and the security guard. And of lately, I think we should also mention that we've been having a lot of issues with security guards lately. We saw what happened with Nutland Mall, and we saw.
But is there ever an excuse for a student to physically put their hands and body slam a security guard? Even if the security guard says something that maybe he should not have said.
That's true. There's no excuse, but I think it's yet to be said in terms of what happened that triggered the action that he did.
So I mean, the action there's more to this story.
Yeah, the action that he did, I think, was unacceptable. Should not have been done. I think it's inexcusable to behave that way in a school, especially for who he is. But I think we've not seen the picture in its totality.
I am aware of other incidents, and anything relevant will come out in the court of law.
So is this just a young, talented person on the field, but a little too physical off the field?
Well, we want to pray for Jayru Campbell and his family, because this is a very, very serious matter. And I think it's captured people's attention because he has become a symbol now, symbol of so many things, symbol of African-American male image, a symbol of the state of public education, a symbol of maybe what DPS in Detroit mean for the state of Michigan and in the national context. You know, much like Trayvon became a symbol of African-American angst, right? You know, you see the same thing happening locally. There was a history here, but to say that he was trending towards uncontrollable violence, I think is premature. I mean, when you look at the videotape, there are a couple things that are interesting. One, there are other security personnel on the tape, and they're watching the interaction. They do not come to the aid of the other security officer. They don't intervene. They don't say halt. They don't say stop. They don't caucus. Look, when somebody throws a flag on the play and the referees are not sure what the call should be, right, before they engage the players on the field, they stop and have a caucus. I mean, there was no caucus. I mean, so that's a bit strange. And then also on the tape, it looks like two aggressive African-American males. Of course, Mr. Campbell was aggressive, but the security guard had a level of aggression. You see Campbell almost stiff-arming him, as if to say, back up, get off of me. And then you see the security guard making one advance, two advance, third advance, body slam. I mean, so the engagement does not seem to be the kind of engagement that should happen in a school. So,
hang on one second. I've got to slip a commercial in. I hate to cut you off. I promise I'll come right back and we'll pick right up. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Before we went to the break, I had to cut Reverend Bullock off. I apologize, had to slip in that commercial. We'll pick right back up with you.
Yes, it's simply saying, look, there are a number of issues here. What's the protocol for dealing with students who say don't listen to the authority figure? I don't think that protocol is aggressively encroaching on students. I mean, we've all been in school. If you disobey someone, you know, typically the teacher caucuses with the principal. Or, I mean, there's some caucus and there's a softer approach. The security guards seem to escalate the situation. I mean, so the question of protocol in DPS and security guards is raised. Also, this question of the felony charge. I mean, is it too much? I think it is excessive. Some people say, well, you know, it's just a charge. He's going to beat it. You know, but the point is that he is being charged with the felony. This is a kid. I mean, this is a teenager, and I think we have to all agree that in our youth, sometimes we have not mastered how to deal with anger, how to deal with aggression, how to deal with disappointment. Right?
At 17, I'm sure we all did things that at our ages now we go back and look on and say, oh my gracious, boy, that was a dumb thing for us to do at that age.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So to see people criminalizing a 17-year-old, right, and turning this into he's a criminal. Right. I mean,
let me ask the question there.
We also have to take into account too what we didn't see on the videotape.
Sure, and that, a court of law, this is going to all come out. Yeah,
exactly.
He's a superstar at 17. I think the burden here is that, you know, and this is a national trend, a national pattern, is that, you know, African American.
What's the bigger message? What's the message to young people out here?
Yeah, that, you know, no matter who you are, I mean, there's accountability for what you do. But what I want to say is that, you know, there's the burden of African American boys not being able to be boys because they're always seen in an adult perspective. And, you know, we have to look into what his story is in terms of his background, in terms of, you know, what his record in school is, aside from being the superstar player, but what is the other record in school that we don't know about? So I think all of that should come to bear in this. And this is actually, this begins a larger conversation in terms of reforming the Detroit public schools, in terms of its public safety, and some other issues that relate to kids.
Don't let DPS off the hook. DPS
Exactly.
hired a company that provides security. One of their security guards was involved in an altercation.
Yeah. And we should say, in fairness to the security guard, regardless of what the verbal exchange may have been, that we certainly have concern for the physical health of the security guard, because this is a human being that luckily did not lose their life, but could have in a situation like this.
Right. And so I think it starts there. This larger question, though, for other 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds. Look, in this age of social media, people have cameras on their phones. You know, understand that folks are watching all the time, even when you don't know they're watching.
Yeah, nothing's in private anymore these days.
And then dealing with anger. I think that there's an interesting piece here about how we deal with anger. What do we do when we're angry? Whether we're parents, teachers, students, or just folks on the street. I think there is a culture in our community that says the only real appropriate way to deal with anger is to lash out, to use an obscenity, to hit, right? And I think there needs to be a whole conversation and training around.
And regardless of what facts may come out in this case, we may find, regardless of who was more at fault, that this entire situation could have been dealt with in a much different way on both sides of the fence.
There are several teachable moments, as Reverend Bullock pointed out, but we also, too, within that, we have to look at where our resources are going in the school with public safety. Do we continue to, you know, put money behind that and put more security officers in the school, or do we bring in programs to help deal with those kind of issues so that we don't get to that point?
He's a young male, a young black male who's facing the, you know, the reality of 10 years in prison. So I think we need to look at this in a bigger perspective on what this means and the lesson for this, as well as this school district.
Reverend Bullock, 10 seconds. In your press release, you said something that's interesting. You said we need to look at this as not the end of Jayru's career, so to speak, and I'm paraphrasing you now, but as a potential success story. What did you mean by that?
Overcoming tragedy, overcoming obstacles, overcoming problems and issues. The way I see people talking about this, it's almost like this is the period. This is the end. No, this is a comma, right? And I think what's powerful about this is that a year from now, 2 years from now, maybe he's in the NFL, right? And we can look back and say, hey, this happened, but it was not the end of both an academic or athletic career. Let's all begin to push for the future progress of Jayru Campbell. And I believe he's going to get past this.
Right. Reverend Bullock, thank you so much for coming in. I wish we had more time. I've got to get my colleague Carolyn Clifford in here to weigh in on this. Zenobia Jeffries, thank you so much for joining us from the Michigan Citizen. And Bankalei Thompson of the Michigan Chronicle, thank you for joining us. And we'll be back with Carolyn Clifford right after this commercial break. We hope you stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is my colleague and friend, Carolyn Clifford, Channel 7 Action News. And we appreciate you coming in and joining us today on Spotlight.
I'm glad to be here.
Carolyn, you had the opportunity to be able to talk extensively with Jayru's mother. You also know the coach, have talked to the coach. And you've had that opportunity that a lot of other journalists in this town have not had. What's your gut feeling? I mean, you've seen the video that's all over America, a gut-wrenching type of scene to watch. You've also heard the comments, people wondering, is this a young man very, very troubled, anger problems, a hoodlum, whatever name you want to attach to it, who should be facing the criminal justice system, or is this a teenager who made a bad decision and now is caught up in the criminal justice system?
First, I do want to say a 17-year-old definitely made a big mistake, a huge mistake. And he is not a hoodlum. I mean, I've talked extensively with his coach, Thomas Wilcher, who went to the University of Michigan, played under Bo Schembechler, grew up in Detroit, helps a lot of kids in the city of Detroit. And Coach Wilcher has said he's been around this kid since he was in 8th grade.
So he knows this kid.
He knows this kid. He said when he was at Bates Academy, he had a 3.8 grade point average. In high school, he's a solid C+ average kid, would help a lot of people, never really got into any trouble, no real problems until last April. But in order to understand a 17-year-old like Jayru Campbell, you do need to talk to family members. Like you said, I did get a chance to interview his mother, Tiffany Parrish, who told me he does have issues with anger. But the question is, why would he have so many issues with anger? Well, if you look into his history, like a lot of kids growing up in Detroit, there are domestic violence issues in his own family.
That could have contributed to how he handles a situation in which he may feel as though he's being confronted by a security guard, right or wrong, and the security guard may have been well within his right. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the facts tell us.
Absolutely, and when you look at a successful football player, they are taught to annihilate another player on the football field. So they're really taught violence. Physical game. Very physical game. If you see violence at home, sometimes as a kid you don't know how to act out. I mean, how do you turn it off? How do you turn up? And I'm not making an excuse for a young man who's sitting at home right now, expelled from school, trying to keep up with his schoolwork, thinking about whether or not he's going to be able to play football in college or maybe facing jail. They don't always make the right decisions, and I mean, this is a major, major mistake. I think he realizes that, according to Coach Wilcher and according to his mom, Tiffany Parrish.
At this point, looking at it as a journalist who you've covered incidents like this before, this is going to be carried out throughout the high profile of the television cameras. This is a high school star, so it's not going to be something that's going to be quietly handled. It's going to be in full public view. We're going to be covering it. How much more pressure does that put on him, as well as the security guard and everything around it, and also Prosecutor Kim Worthy, who we all know is a tough prosecutor.
Kim Worthy is a tough cookie, but look at that video. If anyone out there, if you're looking at that video, look and listen very carefully. First of all, you have a shorter security guard. Jayru is a tall quarterback, a physical kid, but you have another tall security guy standing next to the little one. He didn't intervene at all. Also, think about all of those kids in that hallway. They're hollering, "Get him, Jayru! Get him, Jayru!" While
peer
they
pressure
have
involved.
Peer pressure. While they have a camera recording the whole incident, you hear another young lady who's saying, "Stop instigating! Stop instigating!" Why didn't the bigger security guard maybe step in and squash the issue? I'm not blaming him. Jayru made the mistake. He's going to pay the consequences. But look at the whole picture of that video. Just don't look at that one body slam and just call it that. There were a lot of things going on. And you know how kids in a hallway can instigate a fight. And sometimes you need someone to step in and say, back up. Go to the office right now. Back up. Think about it. Go to the office.
Sure. Kim Worthy has had her press conference. I'm sure there will be more press conferences. She's used to the media. She knows to articulate herself in the media. We have not really heard from Jayru's attorney.
We've tried to get him.
And if you could give him any advice at this point, what would it be, and how to deal with the media in a high-profile case like this?
In a high-profile case like this, if you don't want that video to speak for Jayru, you better speak for Jayru. You better tell his story and explain to people what this kid is like, how remorseful he is, and he did say that briefly after court yesterday. But speak for a kid who cannot speak for himself.
All right, Carolyn Clifford, thanks so much. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I promise we'll ask you to come back. We hope you come back. I know that you used to be a Girl Scout, so we'll put you in Scouts Honor coming back.
Please do.
And unfortunately, we don't have any more time, but we'll follow this and we'll get you back and keep doing the good work that you're doing on Action News.
Thanks, Jeff.
And coming up, I'll travel to Lansing and I'll sit down with our Channel 7 posters for some of the latest numbers about the mood of Michigan. We'll be right back. John, if you're a politician and you're running for office and you look at this poll, what will make you smile and what will make you frown?
Well, it depends on which side of the fence you're on, I suppose. If you're the president, you'd like to see the direction of the country numbers better. They are mired at wrong direction in the high 50s. And if you're on the other side of the aisle as an executive, Governor Snyder's got to be pleased with the fact that for the first time in a long time, a majority of respondents say the state is on the right track as opposed to being off in the wrong direction.
So would it be safe to say at this juncture the U.S. Senate contest is either candidate's race?
Oh, absolutely. It's still a long way to go, and the only spending has, in terms of campaign ads, have been against Peters, but both sides will still spend a great deal of money. I'm sure that it will be several $1 million on both sides. The U.S. Senate is at stake, and this as a open seat now, they're going to spend a tremendous amount of money on both sides. Democrats to retain it, and Republicans to take it.
John, as you drill down on this poll, what pops up as the key issues for voters?
They will hear over and over again the respective parties' take on funding for education. That clearly came out on top, along with repairing the roads, as what to do with the budget surplus. It's interesting to note, and I think important to note for politicians, that granting a tax break, income tax break, was a very distant third in what to do with the nearly $1 billion and what's expected to be $1 billion in surplus.
You also polled Attorney General Bill Schuette in this poll. Do any of his numbers surprise you?
That was another notable thing that I found out of the survey. If I'm not mistaken, Attorney General Schuette has held public office either at the state or federal level for about the past 25 years, yet has fairly high non-recognition at 38%. Still, he's been in the news quite a bit and placed himself in the news quite a bit on various issues. So I was a little bit surprised by that, and that translates into the matchup against who is virtually unknown, Totten, who may be the Democratic nominee for AG, with next to zero name recognition. And still they are in a statistical dead heat in a matchup.
In the race for governor, does Mr. Snyder have a huge advantage?
At this stage of the game, in mid-February of a gubernatorial year, if I had to sum it up, I would say it's Snyder's to lose. That is at this point in February. There's been very little activity out of the Shower camp, and the governor has the advantage of gaining press anytime he cares to, simply by stepping out of the office and talking.
And what, in your opinion, does Mr. Shower have to do that he's not currently doing?
I have not seen nearly enough activity out of the Shower campaign. I mean, he should be going out trying to get publicity, free media for anything he can. And he has not been covered all that much in the news, which means that he hasn't gone out and tried to seek coverage. And the other issue is raising money.
Special thanks to all of my guests today. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.